I love being a woman. It's amazing. There's so many cool things about it that really excite me and fill my life with joy.
The Change Podcast. Everything changes, everything stays the same.
Why does everything keep on changing?
Welcome again to the Change Podcast. I'm Shane.
I'm Jam.
Change is hard, inevitable, but it's what makes life thrilling. Hey, it's great to be back here, Jem. It's been forever.
Yes, it's been far too long. We really let the ball drop for a little while there. Apologies to anyone who's been waiting. I'm sure there's many of you.
Well, I've had certainly people have said, how's Jem going? And we'll talk about that today. I think we're actually going to do this podcast as a catch-up podcast. Before doing so, I should shout out to Steph, who was our guest last time, and they've been publicly talking about on Facebook. They've had top surgery, and they are delighted to have gone through that, and thankful for a bunch of people who helped support the price of that. So well done, Steph, and I look forward to hearing how it's been for you. Maybe even one day we'll catch up and see how life has changed.
Yeah, very exciting changes. So very stoked for them.
And have you had what have you been doing over the last few months, Jim?
Yeah, so it has been probably, I think the last time we caught up was at 2 months or something, or maybe even 5 weeks.
I think it might be longer.
Since we did a proper check-in with all of the changes that have been happening. So today is actually my 6 months E-Day, I'm calling it. So 6 months since I started taking estrogen. And a lot has been happening in that time. I really wish that I could just go into a little cocoon and transition and then resurface, but life has many other things happening. And so I've been
I should say, I don't know that we've talked about the fact that you are doing a PhD.
We have glossed over it. Usually we introduce ourselves. I introduce myself as a PhD student, just to let people know that I am the brains of the duo.
That's true.
Because you're the style, obviously.
Well, there you go. What is your PhD about?
So I'm in psychology broadly. I'm researching mind wandering. So I guess a quick spiel. Mind wandering, you're all familiar with it. We spend probably half of our waking lives mind wandering. It is our brain's spontaneous and or unintentional thought processes. So it's essentially, why is it so hard to keep the human mind still? How come
we can't pay attention?
Well, yeah, we can't pay attention. But also, I can hold my arm up straight for as long as I want to, and at no stage is it just going to start moving in random directions.
Well, mine will.
Yours will, yeah.
Injury.
So for some, maybe, but the mind is quite different in that we feel like we have all of this agency and control over our thoughts, but actually a lot of the time our mind has a mind of its own and it just does its own thing. And it's this funny little contrast. It kind of represents both our inability to control our thoughts a lot of the time, but it also represents our unique capacity to motivate ourselves with alternatives to the here and now, to consider far-reaching possible universes and then to pursue those things. So it's a really interesting phenomenon.
So mind wandering is the extent to which you're heading down a thought path and suddenly the brain changes to think about something else. Is that a non-technical definition?
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. And to save everyone the technicalities, it's essentially lapses in attention, or, when you sit down and you kind of just let your mind do its own thing, go on its own little wandering, meandering journey. When you don't really have a purpose and your mind just wanders into the forest of thoughts. But yeah, it's really hard to define and to measure quantitatively. And so it is a huge endeavor in the psychological research right now, trying to understand mind wandering. And it's been a huge stress to me in the last 4 months.
Yeah.
So that's, my life over the last 4 months has been a fluctuating between trying desperately to focus on my PhD, which kind of takes all of my mental capacity, cognitive energy when I'm in it. There's not, like, doing a PhD, you work during the day, but then when you're not working, your mind's always kind of like toying with the ideas and trying to put it all together and integrate the information in the background. And so that's always happening. But then simultaneously, transitioning is the same thing. Going through any kind of like identity change, it's a big cognitive endeavor. And so I have constantly also am constantly processing my identity and who I want to be and what my actions maybe are presenting.
So you feel almost a bit torn between these two different poles of direction at the moment, or you're just too busy. I guess in an ideal world, transition would involve heading off to the monastery for 6 months while you go through this process.
Probably more like 2 years.
2 years, okay. I've slightly reduced the time frame there, haven't I?
I need a whole puberty to to do this process. Realistically, I need a whole childhood of socialization to truly become a woman, but I'm doing my best to let that process unfold for myself in the meantime of being an adult. But yeah, one of my biggest difficulties is that I really struggle to accept slowness and just give myself the space to like let things unfold. And I'm very proactive in seeking out fun and challenges and just my ambitions, I guess. I also really want to develop a writing practice. I'm doing improv comedy classes every Tuesday night. I work a day as a research assistant for someone else at the uni. And so within all these
welcome
things,
to adult life. It is complex and busy and torn
it's a
in
juggling
multi-directions.
Act. It's a juggling act.
Yeah.
And so I'm getting a bit upset, I think, in not giving myself the amount of time to just allow myself to transition. And that's a realization I've had recently. And so I'm pulling back, I am slowing down, and I am I'm choosing to stay in instead of going out.
But it's not that you're not giving up on transitioning. You're just saying it's okay to take some time. You were saying before we were talking, for examples, even something as practical as voice training takes a real focus and an effort and an energy, and it's not easy to do that while studying a PhD. So you're just going to allow that one to be something you'll do in the future, or will you do that a little bit now as well? Or how are you managing just a practical skill like that? Because I guess the challenge of transition is you've got to redevelop habits of voice and habits of thought and habits of behavior, don't you?
Yeah. So, you've asked me 3 questions in that. The first one, I will definitely continue transitioning. I am really happy. I love being a woman. It's amazing. There's so many cool things about it that really excite me and fill my life with joy. So we can get into those. But yeah, there are so many, like unlearning, you're right. Unlearning habits is a very constant process. And I was trying to do everything at once. And so I was doing voice training. I was seeing a speech pathologist, getting exercises from her to raise my pitch and change my resonance and just find my like natural feminine voice. But I was doing that like 30 minutes twice a day for a long time. And that's just, it was such a commitment. And after doing that for a few months, and the progress is really slow, I was getting really frustrated with it. And for the sake of my well-being, I decided one thing at a time, I'll re-socialize myself first, and then I'll work on my voice once I'm feeling a bit more clear and happy and just kind of willing to suffer through that slow process. So in the meantime, I will have a...
Can I just push like the voice, does it matter? What difference would it make to be a trans woman but just retain your old voice? What's the adjustment?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, for me, what it is that I want to sound how I feel, and the way, like the association that we have in society. You know, my masculine voice isn't soft and, you know, approachable and loving. It's harsh and deep and maybe a little bit scary.
Oh dear, I wonder what my students would think of that description of my voice. The Clifton voice, a little scary.
No, I mean, I'm probably being a bit dramatic. I think my masculine voice was bassy and soothing, but I mean, yeah, I'm already a series of stark contrasts. Like one of my friends reflected the other day, she's like, it's so funny, like hearing you speak and interacting with you, because sometimes I forget your size based on how you're being. And then I see your size and it's like, whoa, this is a big person.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like...
People are completely unaware of my size. So when I say to people I was, 194 or 6'5" in the old money or 6'4", they go, what? Because in a wheelchair, you're squashed quite down, you stand next to the 5'2" person and you're eye to eye.
Yeah.
But we are big people as Cliftons, aren't we? So
yeah, exactly. So being already a series of stark contrasts, my voice is something that I have control over to a degree. And so, it just makes me feel good to be able to speak in a more flowy, rhythmic way. That's the feminine. I mean, masculine voices are usually more monotone. So yeah, I'm working on my enunciation as well as my pitch and my resonance. And frankly, I can make cuter noises with a feminine voice, and I like being cute. So yeah, few things
that makes sense. Yeah,
but again, it's not a need. It's something that I will work on when I can, because in the meantime, my voice works.
Yeah. I think I asked you another couple of questions and I can't remember what they were, but we'll move on.
Yeah, it was about essentially unlearning is a long process. And so there's many things that I do need to unlearn, re-socialize myself. This is why I would love to go into a cocoon and just redo my teenage movie viewing experience. I've watched Twilight, all of the Twilight movies in the past few months, and shamelessly loved them.
Oh my gosh.
So that's hilarious to admit. I really
she's moved from Tarantino, or you're still going to hold a bit of passion for Tarantino there?
I still value high quality cinematography and like well thought out plot lines.
He's not the most feminine of directors though, that's for sure.
No. But for a cheesy chick flick where it's just feel good and campy as hell, and something to laugh at, Twilight was actually really enjoyable.
Okay.
So yeah, I whoever hasn't watched Twilight, you are doing yourself a disservice.
Okay. Well, I haven't watched Twilight, and don't think I'm about to change that now. Life's too short to go down that particular rabbit hole.
Yes, it's true. Life is too short.
You said that there's been some really thrilling things over the last few months. So what are some of those thrilling things or exciting things?
Yeah. So maybe I don't know how to structure all of this. I should preface, some of these things are really hard to talk about in terms of just putting words to them. Like I'm trying to explain changes in the way that I feel and experience the world, and I haven't yet, or I don't know if I ever will, be able to fully formulate those things verbally. But I'm going to do my best, and I don't want to like step on any toes or suggest that like this is what femininity is and this is what masculinity is. And I'm not saying that these are hardwired gender differences between people. Men and women are actually more similar than they are different. We're all human beings, but there are these like interesting differences that occur from hormonal drives. And I'm going to try and talk about what has happened for me in this process.
Yeah. Well, should we start with physical changes then? Yeah. Because so you've been estrogen for 6 months. So
6 months of estrogen. So yeah, I mean, let's do a little show and tell. My breasts have grown a fair bit. It's kind of funny showing this on camera, but.
So you're not looking at a bra or anything there. You've actually got.
I am wearing a bra, but there's no padding. So I have gotten to the stage now where it's more appropriate for me to wear a bra in my daily life. Otherwise, just nipples on display. I have experienced the discomfort of people staring at my nipples, and it's really weird and off-putting and alarming that someone can so blatantly stare and either not realize or just not care. I've
welcome to my life. The disability has the stare. I think in one of the great feminist writers used to talk about womanhood and the stare, or the gaze, and disability has that. The gaze or the stare as well as sort of part of the day-to-day experience. And maybe the challenge with women is there's with disability, that stare has a sort of a strangeness about it, or it's an otheringness about it, whereas maybe the stare with women has a more controlling, sexualized dimension to it. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can reflect on that too much yet, as much as it's just off-putting, really. Having like I was running experiments, and I had this participant who, while I was explaining the experimental instructions to them, was just going like eyes, chest, eyes, chest, eyes, chest. And it's just like, it's hard to focus. I can tell that you're not paying attention to what I'm saying, which is actually really important in this moment. And why do you need to, like, what's going to happen in this room? Stop looking, just pay attention to what's important right now.
Do you think, and this is just devil's advocate, do you think, because sometimes the reason our eyes move down is not per se because we're looking at breasts, but because there's something about, we don't often like to look a person in the eye all the time. And so all I'm saying is there a chance early on in this experience that you feel people are looking at you more than they maybe are, or no, they're definitely?
No. Definitely directly at my boobs. Not saying that he was doing that I'm not saying he's a freak, predator, anything like that. Like, more than likely, he wasn't even aware he was doing it. He was probably just like I wasn't wearing a bra. This is why I've started wearing a bra.
Right.
My nipples were out, and I am, who knows, maybe it was just the fact that like he was confused by the contrast of seemingly a man in some ways, but like, why are there these pointy things sticking out of her shirt? And it might have been a background process for him, and he was just trying to pay attention, but just kept getting drawn back to it. I'm studying mind wandering. We don't have full control over our minds and our attention. So graciousness to him, it was just hilariously off-putting for me trying to focus on what I was saying, watching his eyes. So that's been happening. And I mean, one of the beautiful things that's been happening lately regarding my physical appearance is that people are starting to refer to me as a woman in public randomly, and not everyone. Sometimes I get ma'am. I still frequently get sir. And personally, I'm really curious what causes that difference. I mean, in all cases, like I'm going into public dressed full femme, do my hair up really pretty, often wearing makeup, wearing feminine glasses, jewelry, the whole shebang. And some people still look at me and think that I want to be called sir.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why. Like, what am I doing this for if I want you to refer to me as a man?
Look, I don't find it difficult to properly gender you, especially when I'm with you, because, as you say, it's pretty obvious you're a woman and she. The only time I struggle with it probably is maybe when I'm not as present with you and it's back on past memories. But it's interesting. Like I noticed Mum, for example, talking about you when you were a kid and using the she, which is we're just getting better. So it does get easier over time, but it's pretty hard to misgender you. I think.
It is, and it does get easier the more I change. And so I'm only at 6 months. This is, most of the changes will occur over 2 years, and there are subtle things happening. Obviously, like, I don't know how well you can see my face right now, but there are subtle things that have happened that have made my face look more feminine now. The facial structure hasn't changed, so I still have a masculine structure, like my eyebrow bone and my jawline is bigger, and also just my whole skull is larger. But somehow the little pockets of fat around my face are redistributing, and so I'm starting to look more feminine. And so I think it's getting to the stage where people are starting to go, oh wow, like or not wow, just going, oh, woman, instead of, oh, man. Because one of the first things we do when we see someone is gender them. So it's nice. It's really affirming. Like, I was at Woolies the other day and one of the shop attendants, I spoke to them and they were like, hey, ma'am. And I just wanted to hug them straight away. I was like, oh my God, thank you so much.
I'm sorry, but it's such a dowdy expression, ma'am, isn't it? It's almost... but I guess it's a lovely affirmation of gender.
Wait, what did you say? Sorry, downing?
Dowdy.
Dowdy. Oh, yes.
It makes you like, what are you, 50?
Yeah, no. Well, it's the feminine equivalent to sir, though, and I always got sir. Right. I think it's more. It is dowdy. It's probably. I don't know if many younger people use it. I don't know. Yeah. I often used to get sir, so they still get thrown around. Yeah, ma'am is just the female equivalent.
Yeah, lovely.
And it was that was really nice. So that's happening. My skin is softer again. I am putting on some weight, which initially was really scary because I've never put on weight before. And so suddenly gaining weight without having actually changed anything about my lifestyle. I'm a really healthy eater and I exercise a lot. So that was just a bit scary being like, oh my God, what am I going to be able to do if I'm just gaining weight still? But then it has stopped, I think. So I think it's just the feminine body, the female body, does hold more fat, and so part of like it's softened my appearance. So now I actually like it. It's given me a little bit of like belly fat, and so I just look a bit more what's the word? Curvaceous. Shapely. Yeah. I'm looking more shapely in my thighs. My butt has grown a lot as well. That's hilarious. I've been a lifelong lanky pencil, and now I'm maybe becoming more pear-shaped with a pair with large shoulders at least. So that's cool. What else physically?
Well, beyond the physical then, what else have you enjoyed about the transition over the last few months?
Yeah. So this is where gets harder to talk about. This is the like experiential identity side of things. So I guess broadly, like I have softened a lot in my being. I present myself more softly, not necessarily actively. Like I just feel. Maybe I should start with my emotions. I think
Okay.
this is what's driving a lot of it. I'm a lot more emotional now. In the sense that like previously I probably had 3 or 4 emotions, and now I have many combinations of many different emotions simultaneously. I can be like really sad and happy at the same time. I can like cry, like wail, cry so sad and also feel so good about it. And my emotional range has like widened. So the highs are higher and the lows are lower as well. I like I said, I've been feeling overwhelmed. I think that is somewhat hormonal. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, this is so hard, and I just cry for a few minutes, and then
So
I
your
just go back to doing
estrogen,
it.
when you say hormonal, your estrogen levels are now at a set level, and they're at what would normally the same level as the typical average woman?
Oh yeah. So this is something I wanted to mention. I did my 5-month hormone checkup. I was a few weeks late, so it was only about 2 weeks ago or something that I got the results. But yeah, my hormone levels are now within the regular ranges of a female, which is super exciting. My testosterone is a little bit too low. So that's something I'm needing to balance, work out the right amount of T blocker to have like a healthy amount of testosterone, because without testosterone, I feel like I'm lacking in energy and my sex drive's a bit reduced and just also lower mood. So trying to find that balance at the moment. It's a really difficult thing because it's invisible, and I can't, like, obviously I feel the changes happening, but I don't know how to, like, I'm not well versed enough to say, oh wow, my estrogen feels really high and my testosterone feels really low right now. I've swapped from oral tablets to patches.
Is that because that's what you use to maintain, is it? Or just because it's a different way of taking it?
Just a different way of taking
patch,
it.
the advantage of the patch, because I use patches for some of my medicines, is it sort of gives a more regular flow to the input, doesn't it? So
yeah, well, because with the tablets before, I was taking them morning and night, so I think that was still a regular flow. I think the issue was that my metabolism is really fast, or my liver was not recognizing the medication, and so it was just like rejecting it. And so there was for the first few months, I was really struggling to get my estrogen levels up because I was on the pill, and they were just staying really low. So it's now swapping to the patches has brought my estrogen up because it's not going through my liver. It's just kind of straight into the bloodstream. But yeah, trying to work out the balance with that. I'm also going to get an implant soon, so I don't have to deal with the patches. It'll just be like a slow release dissolving pill that goes into my arm, and I do that once a year, and so then my estrogen's locked in for the year. I don't have to think about it, and then I only have to kind of manage my testosterone blockers, which would be a lot easier. But yeah, so my hormone levels currently are within the female ranges, and so yeah, I guess that interestingly that causes like a negative feedback loop in my brain. So it stops my brain from signaling to produce testosterone, and so that's how, like, now if I like do things like exercise, like yoga, which is supposed to, release endorphins that increase testosterone, like that won't happen. anymore.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a good thing.
Yeah, because now you can
Otherwise,
exercise.
It would be undermining my transition.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before, when you were exercising, that could undermine the transition, but now you can exercise.
Yeah, I was just a bit worried before about how my body's natural processes would be fighting against the medical process.
Yeah.
But yeah, the beautiful thing about the body is that it adapts to a new natural. And so now it's like, okay, well, for some reason my estrogen is higher and my testosterone's lower, so I'm going to stop doing this and we'll just work with estrogen. And then that will have all these changes. So yeah, my emotions have been higher. So many different things. Like I'm a lot more connected to my body. I feel things in my body a lot more. So, if I was with my friend, we were walking past a flower shop the other day and I saw these really beautiful flowers, all these like fun color combinations, and seeing it was like the beauty, I felt it in my body. It was like, it made me feel good, essentially. It was an enjoyable whole body experience. Whereas before it would have just been purely visual. It would have just, oh, that looks cool. How visually stimulating, and then move on. And I was hanging out with my housemate and she was showing me photos of clouds, and because she's been doing a lot of flying with her nursing placement with air ambulance, and she loves clouds, so she's been flying through the clouds and taking heaps of photos of clouds and then showing me these photos. And it's like, through my whole body, seeing the wonder of these clouds. And so just as a stark contrast from what it's like being on testosterone, estrogen is a lot more body feelings. I even like it feels baseline kind of like a nurturing, warm hug in my body a lot. So if I'm like anxious and stressing, like coming into my body is really helpful, and doing like physical movements that make me feel good is helpful as well, like dancing and yoga and flowy movement feels a lot better, whereas before I probably would have had to go and do some kind of like activity and get myself engaged in a different way. Like I can just lay on the ground, just be like, oh, my body feels so good.
It's intriguing because I'm sort of pretending to nod sagely, like I know what you're talking about. And is the reason I don't know what you're talking about just because I'm male, or actually because there is a disjunct from my body and my brain that's inherent to spinal cord injury in so many ways? So
probably a mixture of both.
Yeah,
and I also think like all of my female friends who I've spoken to about this also, they kind of get what I mean, but it's not as obvious to them. They're kind of like, oh, what? Yeah, I guess so, but I'm not really aware of that. And the reason is just because they haven't experienced the absence of it and moving into it. So yeah, it is less with testosterone. There is a distinct feeling of being on testosterone and a distinct feeling of being on estrogen. Testosterone is more like, like charged with energy to do, and estrogen feels more like charged with energy to feel. That's the grandest simplification ever. But like just another point I want to make is it probably is a bit to do with your spinal cord injury as well, because it's crazy how quickly we forget what our experience used to be like as we adapt to the new. And so I'm thankfully I'm journaling my experiences and writing and trying to keep track of how I felt before, because sometimes I can't even feel a lot of the changes that I'm going through because they're so gradual and I'm living in them every moment and forgetting what it used to be like on the tail end. So I don't even I don't think I could now swap back into being how I used to be anymore.
I think very early on we did ask the question, you'll try this and see whether it's right. And so 6 months down the track, do you feel like, yep, this is a journey. This is who I am. I'm not going back now.
Yeah. We have already answered this question
Right,
so far, but
it's another few months down the track. So.
No. As in 10 minutes ago we spoke
Okay.
about it. I did answer this question.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not going back.
Yeah.
There are still challenges and things that I struggle with that I'm like, ugh, I wish I didn't have to deal with this. But sometimes I feel like, life would be easier if I was cisgendered, obviously, because I wouldn't have to go through this challenge. But also, I'm so happy as a woman, and there's just So,
well, I don't want to dwell on the negatives then. So what are the negatives? But
I have more positives to go through.
Okay. Oh,
so
let's do more positives
other
then.
things, I have more of a desire to be close to people all the time. I feel vulnerable regularly, and I love that feeling. I just want to feel close and affectionate with people. I'm more like, I had this funny experience in the bush a little while ago of feeling the contrast of like when I was really in my feminine, I just wanted to be in the forest and enjoy the feelings associated with that, the beauty of nature, the freedom of just like vast, open, random space around me, and just enjoy that. And then we started moving through the forest, and as we were coming across like obstacles, like there was a flowing rapid stream from all the rain we've had, suddenly faced with this need to like overcome an obstacle, which in the past would have excited me. I would have been like, oh, cool. Like this is this fun little trick that we have to get past. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to have to deal with this. And that was a funny thing for me to experience, because it is a stark difference for myself. And the only reason why I didn't want to deal with it is because I wanted to stay in that feeling that I was enjoying, which was being in the forest. And that was an intrusion. It was going to make me messy and colder and etc. And, I still did it and I had fun. It's not saying that I couldn't do it, but I'm recognizing that there is a different way to be, and that both are equally valuable. And in the past, I was always very focused, and maybe I was on the extreme end of the spectrum of doing, because Cliftons are very doing focused, very activities focused. And now I'm really enjoying, the more, the slower, more feeling side of experience.
I guess I'm wondering whether that has to be gendered, because I think part of that could be personality, and I guess hormones do also affect personality, but because I feel like that, there's just as likely to be women who are wanting to constantly take the next challenge and do the next adventure and win the next battle.
Yeah. And that's why at the start I prefaced by saying this isn't, I'm not making statements of gender. This is my experience.
And we share more with in our humanity than we do.
There are women who are more activities focused, and there are men who are more feeling focused.
But you've noticed this transition in yourself.
I've noticed this transition in myself. And I think, it could be twofold. It could be that I've started taking estrogen, and I've given myself permission to feel how I always wanted to feel. Because, I remember feeling this way as a kid.
You've oriented yourself to feeling.
Yeah. I always wanted to be feeling focused. I was aware of that desire in my head, but raised in a family value system based on doing and achieving and all of that. So it was always there, but it was also semi-blocked from me, because like I said, the way testosterone made me feel was, ugh. Like, and that's not a comfortable feeling to just sit in the forest in, when your body's going, ugh, ugh, ugh. and so at least in me, testosterone didn't allow me to feel the way that I wanted to feel. And so this process of changing my hormonal makeup constitution has enabled me to feel the way that I always felt I should feel. And it's felt like a homecoming to myself in a lot of ways. I think I remember saying in one of the earlier podcasts that it feels like I can access a space in myself that was always there, but I couldn't reach before. And it feels like that. It feels like that feeling is just expanding. Like I remember speaking to Mum before I started transitioning, when we were trying to work out, like, should I do this? And I was trying to communicate with you guys that it's a feeling that I had, and you guys were trying to understand. You're like, what is it? Why do you feel this way? And I'm, stuck in words. I'm saying, well, I just want to be able to like go for a walk and just appreciate looking at things. And Mum was like, well, you can do that. And yes, I could do that, but not in the same way. And now I go for walks and my mind is actually 100% satisfied by the beauty of looking at a tree. I don't need anything more. It's just like, oh, beautiful. I love this. Whereas before it was like, oh, cool tree, but
let me climb it.
Let me climb it, or let me do this other thing, or let me do that.
Maybe for myself, then I need to start taking estrogen. Because the hard thing about spinal cord injury, of course, is that when you look at the surf and you want to go and catch a wave or climb that tree, you can't. And so one of the challenges is being in that space where you can just enjoy being rather than doing. So there you go. The solution to spinal cord injury is estrogen, is it?
I don't know. That might be undermining a lot of female spinal cord.
I'm just being stupid.
Individuals.
So,
yeah. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about how I've been feeling. It's beautiful. Another thing I've noticed is like when I'm hanging out with people, I do tend to lean towards hanging out with females more now, because I can kind of stay in this like soft connecting space where we all will like listen to each other and talk slowly about things and feel our feelings in each other's presence. And I've noticed now when I'm in that space with women and a group of boys comes into the room and they're doing their like male thing of like coming at each other and being competitive and loudness and ferocity and all of that. It's really abrasive. It's really disturbing. And having been on the other side of that for so long, I could never see that. I never understood it until I've been here and been like, oh, okay, right. There's this softer, slower way of being that I was always, that I never understood and was always intruding upon. And I never understood why the girls couldn't just jump in and be silly buggers with us in the same way. So yeah, it is hard to word, but there's some differences that really beautifully resonate with me and I really enjoy it. Yeah. Shall we get into the challenges?
Sure. I think this is a pretty long podcast so far, so that have we got time, or do we do that at another time?
Yeah. Maybe we can just do a quick covering. Like, it's kind of, the challenges is just that I still have kind of latent transphobia built into me from my childhood. And so it's like, it's an uphill battle, always reminding myself that that I am valid and beautiful, and not just like seeing a man in the mirror, like reminding myself that I can be a woman. And I would love to have a feminist expert, someone well read in feminism on the podcast, so I can ask them about what it means to be a woman, because it's really confusing. I'm a very cognitive person. I think a lot, I overthink, and so yeah, I have this like eagle eye on everything going through my mind, all of my feelings and actions and thoughts, and I very quickly label them as either masculine or feminine or feeling that way to me, and then it's like, is this how I want to be or not? And just that constant hawk's eagle vision on my own being all the time is really exhausting. And so that's something that, as I settle more, as I unlearn all of my habits that I always fall back on and slowly find my authenticity again, will probably become easier.
Yeah.
But it is challenging.
Any other big challenges you're dealing with at the moment?
Yeah, well, there is. Should we talk about this now?
I think we can. It's whether your game. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll submit to a longer podcast for this one because it has been so long. Yeah. The other challenge, really, the one thing, I love being a woman in so many ways, but the one thing that really like irks me in my transition, that makes me that frustrates me, that I'm really struggling with, is sexual function.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a weird thing to talk about. So I guess in the interest of trying to normalize trans sexuality, I'm willing to talk about it and be open. But I just want to preface that, yeah, this is a weird conversation for me, and I don't feel like it's uncomfortable, but I'm willing.
And look, I guess, the challenge of sexual function isn't just a trans challenge, is it? I think it's it's an aging. People have difficulties with sexual function as they age.
Yeah.
Men who go through prostate cancer have challenged sexual function. Spinal cord injury affects sexual function. So
yeah, and also I should add, I already had anxiety around sex as a man because there's this I guess social, I don't know what the word I'm looking for right now is, this kind of premise that a man's sexual functioning is entirely in their ability to get hard and penetrate. And then there's so many things to do with penis size where, speaking to all the men out there, I'm sure you resonate with this, dick insecurity.
Yeah.
It's a big thing.
Yeah.
Because we get so shamed if your dick isn't the right size or doesn't get hard straight away, or
doesn't stay hard for long enough.
Doesn't stay hard for long enough, or essentially you are, or you view yourself like, this is how I felt. I internalized this, like, I'm useless unless I can be hard, and so then because I'm stuck in that thought loop, obviously that makes it hard to get hard.
So what's the impact on sexual function with trans? It's with the transition for you, and it's to do with just it's harder to get and sustain an erection, is it?
Yeah, well, so it's twofold. It's amazing. My whole sexual function has changed, and so this is actually kind of a big conversation, I guess, because my sexual arousal has changed. Like now, when I get aroused, it is more of a whole body feeling. Like I've experienced arousal in my wrist before, where I was just
all
like
men experience arousal in their wrist or through their wrist anyway. Sorry, that was uncalled for.
Well done. Yeah, so it's a more full body experience. It's a lot less just visual. Like I still do appreciate visual beauty, but it's not just like I see someone beautiful and I'm like, I must.
You do that male thing very stereotypical, don't you?
Yeah, because
when you're playing on it, riffing on it.
It's easy. People get it when I do it stereotypically. It's something that it's a joke I have with my friends. but yeah, it's less visual. I get more like
So there is some
intrigued
sexual
by
advantages, you're
connection.
saying.
Yeah.
Then why is it hard if that's the case?
So the reason why it's hard is because it's harder to get hard
Right.
because testosterone is what like gives you erections. So I don't get spontaneous erections anymore throughout the night, and I won't get hard unless I'm like really aroused, and it takes me longer to get aroused. And I'm more sensitive all over my whole body, so I kind of need more playing in different areas before I can get like really into it. And so it's more of a slow build up. I love subtle touch. The whole active sex is more of a long game of playing than it is, something that I can't just have a quickie anymore.
Which, probably all your partners think is, or your partners think that's not a bad thing.
At least the female partners.
I'm guessing this is a strange conversation to be having with your father, but anyway, we'll keep going. So, for example, I'm just trying to contemplate. A lot of those same issues, the spinal cord injury, but we won't go there today. But I guess to some degree, is the need to get hard part of your latent masculinity, or is that because that's the sexual organ you've got, and so for it to function properly, an erection is part of that?
Yeah, so it's definitely both. It's having to unlearn this internalized insecurity that I've had my whole life, and just like, yeah, the inner dialogue of if I'm getting with a woman is, oh, they're gonna want me to fuck them, and if I can't do that, then they're gonna be disappointed, and I don't want to disappoint them, and so it's that like feedback loop, and so then I get pulled out of the moment, and the difficult thing, and all women are gonna get this, is getting aroused and maintaining arousal and building up, and all of that process. It's a lot more difficult, I guess. You need to really be out of your head and in your body. It's a lot more work for a woman to get aroused and then build up to orgasm than it is for a guy. Like, as a male, before, just rub me off while I'm reading a journal article and I'll get there, even if I'm not paying attention. Whereas now it's like,
oh God, you can tell a scientist when they combine reading a journal article with orgasm, but
it's probably the most innocuous material I could think of off the top of my head. Journal articles kill me. But yeah, now it's a process where it takes me a lot longer to get there. And throughout that process, I am actively bringing my attention back into my body and releasing expectations, and, instead of pushing into it as much, it's like letting it happen. And then, but when I get there, I now have a completely different orgasm. It's a full body. It lasts for longer. I don't ejaculate, and I can go again.
Right.
So that's
interesting. So that actually is affected by the estrogen as well. So that's intriguing.
Yeah.
And as a man, it's hard to imagine orgasm without ejaculation.
Yeah.
They've talked to me about that with spinal cord injury numerous times. Supposedly people with the spinal cord injury can stimulate their ER, for example, and have an orgasm without ejaculation. And
wow,
this just sounds like bullshit to me.
That's hilarious,
I've examined that over an attempted thing that's just never worked that for me. But yeah. So look, and I guess it's moving on from that, because I can hear some advantages in that.
Yeah.
Which, but it's also then that sense of loss.
It's just the frustration, also, yeah, it is hilarious, these symmetries, but anyway.
Between spinal cord injury and the taking of estrogen.
And the trans experience. The frustration is that it is good in so many ways, but it's difficult because the organ I have is designed to get hard and to penetrate. And like, what feels good for me now is also different. It doesn't feel as good to like stroke it because it's more sensitive. It feels better like rubbing it, more analogous to rubbing a clit. And like using a vibrator is way better than stroking. So all of those things are great, but then when I'm with a girl who I want to penetrate because that's a beautiful, intimate experience to share, the difficulty is just that, I can get hard, but then in the few seconds between getting hard and getting it inside, if I have any thoughts, I lose arousal. And so I'm having to like, I guess, shed the inner dialogue that I have built up around what sex is, how I should have sex and how I'm like valuable in sex, and having to reconnect with my body and reappraise what sex is generally for me. And so that's just it can be frustrating.
It does make me wonder. I think very early on we talked about whether you would have bottom surgery, and you were pretty sure you wouldn't at that point in time. Have you progressed at all, changed at all your thinking on this topic, or too early to say?
No, I'm leaning more towards it now. Still giving it lots of time. But I know that I resonate more with I still love to penetrate, but I think a lot of my like energetically speaking, part of the reason why I identify more as a woman than a man is because my being, I prefer submission than domination, or reception than penetration, or welcoming and nurturing versus forcefulness. And so just talking about those masculine and feminine dichotomies. So having genitals that better matched that energy appeals to me. My hesitation is obviously with the intensity of that process, the expanse, the healing afterwards. But yeah, it is something that I think I would like a lot. And also it would just help me function better because it would be aligned with how I'm feeling. And I think a bit of my sexual difficulties is that I feel a certain way, but then I have to bring myself back into the reality of how my genitals are used.
They function in masculine ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Although, I have heard you talk before about the female penis, so which is a really cool expression, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge thing in the trans world. It's like most trans women haven't had bottom surgery.
Yeah.
For many reasons, largely financial, obviously. But a lot of women don't want that because they also still want to be able to top.
Yeah.
And so, they obviously then have to reappraise their genitals. They're not going to be like, oh, I'm a woman, but I have a male penis.
Yeah.
It becomes I'm a chick with a dick and my dick is female. Women can have penises now.
Yeah.
Welcome to the modern day. So.
Well, I think that's fascinating, and glad to hear the update. Is there anything else before we finish?
I mean, thanks for listening to that last part of the conversation, Dad. Hilarious. I think it is an ode to how open our family is with each other, but also, for the sake of the people, I hope you enjoyed. Nothing else that I necessarily can think of right now. It's a challenging process, but it's beautiful. And A lot of the time at the moment, I guess I'm just allowing myself to feel overwhelmed and sad because I need to, because it's a hard process, and I'm content in those feelings, and I'm getting through. And I have lots of ups and downs.
Very good. I think our next podcast might be with an interview with Anthony Van Brown, or it might be on Pride. I'm not sure. We've got a few good ones coming up. We won't be 3 or 4 months between them, I promise.
Yeah, we've got a few coming, but no promises though.
No. We do what we can and they come out when they can. Hey, peace, Jem.
Peace, Dad.
Love you.
Peace, listeners.
Bye.